Hi, and welcome to another episode of Trang Tries It, where I check out a reading so you can see it if you like it before you try it. Today, I will be trying out numerology. Numerology is where they take your date of birth and name and calculate it in many different number combinations to analyze and discover your purpose, meaning, and get guidance on what unhealthy patterns you keep repeating and the cycle of life you're going through at the moment. So for example, a 9-year means endings and transformations, which can be a change, a move, quitting of a job, or something going on that year. And each number you get has a different flair or meaning to it. This is only a very surface level explanation of numerology, and there's so much more that goes into it, which you'll see in this video. In the future, we'll be having a numerology workshop where you'll get to discover what your life path is and more. So to make sure you get notified about it and any other events we offer, click on the link down below to sign up for our newsletter, where we also talk more about spiritual and metaphysical things. The thing about numerology is that it's similar to astrology in the fact that many people may say, oh, but I have a 3 for my life path and so does my friend, but we aren't alike at all. So how does that work? That's like saying, oh, I'm an Aquarius and so is my friend, but we're not alike. And there's so many more numbers that go into it, and that's what an in-depth reading is great for. This video is going to be a little bit different because I had these readings a couple of years ago and I tried 2 places out. The first you'll see is an online report. I went to the site, which I'll include down in the link below, and you'll plug in your name, date of birth, and then you get a PDF report of the numbers and what it means. The second one, I got a session with a numerologist. However, I lost the audio, which I'm so mad at myself for that because I can't show you the audio, but I do have a transcription of the session that I just took notes on, so I'll be reading it to you and explaining my reaction to it. And before we start, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. Okay, let's check out my numerology reading. Okay, so first I'm going to show you guys the PDF report that I got from booking through a online website, numerologist.com. So once you plug and chug your full name and also your date of birth, you get this, and as you can see, it's a really pretty design, and it's your numerology report and the table of contents. It's quite a long PDF, but a lot of it is a couple of like, not empty pages, but covers like that. So here's just the intro, and a little bit, talks a little bit about numerology, the background of it. So I'm just kind of fast forward to the part where it actually talks about my reading. Okay, so first it talks about the meaning of your name and the numbers that go behind it. And so there's like a name number. That's something I'm usually not familiar with. Usually I know about like the life path number or the soul expression, the destiny number. So these numbers are calculated based on the letters in your name. And they talk a little bit about your, I'd say like personality, your temperament, things that you attract, perhaps. I think like I would say this is more of, again, intermediate or beginner level report. It doesn't go as in-depth as much as I would prefer, but for most people, I think this would really suffice, especially many people are new to numerology, and this is kind of like a fun report you can share with friends. So it kind of calculates about your middle name number, and these aren't usually the major numbers, so I'm surprised that they bring this up compared to like usually the life path number. But again, their formatting might be different. So it talks a little bit more about last name. Okay, so now it gets into the soul urge number, and it is nice in the fact that they give a little introduction for people who are probably new to numerology, what it means and how it is calculated. So the soul urge number right here, or it's also known as heart's desire, it's calculated as 4 for me. So again, 4 is usually a person that I think of it as kind of like an accountant vibe, where it's like stable, works hard, likes security in life, is reliable, dependable, and things like that. And then they also get involved in like, what are things you can work on? And then they get into your personality number. And then they get to the expression number, which is the number or the flair that you have on how you show yourself to the world. Here is my life path number. That is usually the main number that people look at. And mine happens to be 11. So in this report, you'll see that it says, it's a master number. and your vibration's different. And you'll see later on with my in-person reading that compared to this, the in-person reading I had with a numerologist is a bit more in-depth and kind of digs more about my life purpose. Whereas this one is a bit more, I wouldn't say generic, but it definitely is like a automated report. Other things this report touches on are the life path challenges and the life path cycles, the pinnacles, and also the achievement number. And as you can see, there's a lot of numbers that are calculated in this report. However, I personally think that some of them aren't, I'm not saying they're not as important, but it's just more like you can tell a lot from the major numbers. But you'll see after this, the in-depth session I had where he calculated only a few numbers, but as an expert, he's able to tie in everything together and be able to pinpoint things happening in my life. So this is the PDF report that you get from numerologist.com. It's about 70 pages long and it's not too bad in terms of pricing. Next, I'm going to show you a one-on-one session I had with a numerologist that I found. So this is my reading with Josh. These numbers are all important. It's what you're here to learn, work through, and what you might attract, what you will attract. Based on experience, you will attract certain experiences in your life that will be reflective of where you are and when you become more subconsciously aware of early childhood patterns that we tend to repeat. Your life path number is 11. Your ultimate goal number, also known as the maturity number, calculates to 43.7 and 17.8. Usually a triple digit number, if the name is super long, extracts into two numbers. So Trang, you essentially have two ultimate goal numbers. You go through these destined experiences that change your psychology, and then you tend to, one way or another, repeat these patterns until the adult mind starts to awaken. It's all part of this sort of program that was given to you at birth. The idea is that you start to awaken and heal and integrate the parts. So some people play it out in their relationships. Some people play it out more in their career. Why that is, it's hard to know. Some people nail down their career stuff earlier than others, and then other people tend to play it out conspicuously in their relationships like clockwork. Other people, at some point realize what's going on and they choose differently. It depends how, some people suffer trauma, some people suffer deeper wounds that delay the healing of that. And then some people, will nail it down earlier for their higher purpose with their relationships and their career. We tend to attract extremes or imbalances with other people, particularly in relationships, until you integrate that into yourself. Now, starting with calculating your numbers, it's easy to see if you have a theme and the sort of center part of the chart and the natural ability talents you were born with, kind of what drives your personality. So Trang, your natural ability number, which is also known as the destiny or expression number, is 96. Personality number is 69, which reduces down to 15, which reduces down to 6. Your inner drive number, which is also known as your heart desire or soul number, is 27, which reduces down to 9. As you can see, 6 is a common number above. 6, generally speaking, rules two different pathways. Many don't do both parts. Some do one more than the other. People can be more of the service and less artistic stuff, and some people can be more of an artist. I try to get them to do a little bit more of the other, adding a little bit to it. So you can either go in the service, healing, helping route, or you have an attraction to the aesthetic or creativity. Now you can see you have 6s and 9s. They are sort of in the same family. They sort of manifest themselves in a similar way. When you see it twice, like the above, you get the idea that this type of person is, with the 9, rules social, humanitarian, groups of people, and the public. In the natural abilities number or destiny expression number, you can see it is a 15/6. That is an improvement number. They like to change things for the better. They can see something that isn't being done correctly, where the flaw is, and they can see where the weak link in the chain is. And they're able to say, hey, let's change this to improve it, to better it. It can also mean social betterment and a need to change things for the better for everyone. Because you have 2 6s in your personality and your natural tendency and abilities and talents, you're obviously going to be a giving person, a caring person, a loving person, a responsible person. Highly responsible and takes care of things. So there's a theme, as you can see, 9/6, 6/9, 27/9. They're all kind of saying the same thing in one way or another. So overall, you'd be a very loving, giving, caring, responsible, person and have a need for the social consciousness or awareness and ability to change, improve things, and able to see the flaws. So when he said this, I was nodding my head like, yep. And it's crazy how, like, you see my 15/6, it's an improvement number, which you probably wouldn't get this on any generic numerology report, but it kind of hit dead on for me because I guess every place, I didn't even notice this until he pointed out, but every place I've worked at, I always kind of see the weakness or the flaws, or like, this could be done better. I'm sure you guys might feel the same way too, or some of you guys are like that at work, but it's always thinking like, this could be better if we did this way or that way. And what's interesting is that my Akashic Records reading kind of talks a little bit about that too, which I find funny. I'll include the link right up here for you to check it out. Now remember, you can't take any one number out of context. People are complex, so you have to integrate the rest of the chart and your development part of your chart and show where some of these natural talents and abilities can get affected by your lessons in interesting ways. Although what I'm saying is basically true, it can get modified based on your lessons in your chart and where you are on your path. Every number modifies every number until we get to the whole, and then sort of look at how they affect each other, because we're human beings, we're complex, we're not one-dimensional. The inner drive number is a 27/9. 27/9 is an inspirational number. This would theoretically mean that there's a desire to connect it to deeper truths. So there may have been a heritage, a spiritual heritage, or a drive and understanding of things like that, a curiosity with that world or wanting to delve into it. And that wisdom and knowledge and breaking it down in a way that can truly change and better people's lives and society and all of that. It's funny he says that because 2 years ago, we were only a couple months in and just like starting the Happy Healing Shop. It wasn't really a big thing yet. So, you know, and he didn't know I did the Happy Healing Shop. Looking 2 years now, in hindsight, it's interesting how it just kind of played out. Your life path is a lesson, and your ultimate goal is so deep of a lesson that's like the propaganda of your experience as a child, the conditioning we go through. Trang, your life path is 11. Okay, quick pause here. In numerology, a lot of people look at your life path kind of like as your sun sign in astrology, right? So it's like the main number. So this is a little tip for you. If you want to calculate your life path, all you need is your entire date of birth. So for example, mine is January 19, 1989. So that would be, as you can see, 1-19-1989. You add up all the numbers together. So as you can see, when you add all the numbers up, it comes to 38. And then you take that and you reduce it down by adding 3 plus 8, which equals 11. 11 is a master number. These people had a special calling or destiny to shift the consciousness of people around them. So it charges the chart with a bit of this nervous intuitive energy. It's supposed to promote insights, revelations, and awakenings. However, having this master number is actually not that easy. They have a tendency to sensitize you, and they can bring a little bit of nervous energy and bring highs and lows and things like that. The number 11 can be very dynamic, but added to it, it brings a 2 because 1 plus 1 equals 2. So they can second guess themselves and say, well, I will assist and support someone else to do that, and they can be the 11 person. Or one day you will feel like there's a special calling for you, but then the next day you'll say, well, it's not me necessarily. All people with 11 as a life path in general tend to do that. I knew that I was a life path 11 already, but it's one of those things where, I guess because I work with psychic medium Maria Hill, and her life path is more, I think it's a 7. So it's interesting because I, just hearing that description, I thought to myself, like, it doesn't make sense because, like, I can totally feel like Maria would be a life path 11, shifting consciousness, introducing people to the metaphysical world and spiritual world. So, but again, these numbers have different flares to them, and there's like more numbers to calculate that goes into your chart. But he was very spot on in the fact that, you know, when he said 11s are like, oh, I'll just assist someone else, which is like me assisting Maria, but also saying like, oh, maybe there's a special calling for me. And then the next day being like, oh, but I don't think it's actually me necessarily. Because I do think that a lot of times, well, back then, now it's different. But where I was like, I don't think it was me meant to be big. Like I'll be like working on a lot of different projects, but me being a major face, if that makes sense. And for those of you who might have a master number 11, it is not in the most comfortable life, as you might see, but I kind of read on another website, and I think they did a great job kind of summing it up. And pretty much, I have another friend who has an 11 master number, and I said to her, I was like, wow, it looks like the first half or good beginning chunk of your life is going to be difficult. And then if you work on yourself, later on, it gets much easier and much better. When you see a combination of the breakdown of these numbers, the child experiences some kind of trust, betrayal, or perception of that in their childhood. This trust or betrayal isn't necessarily a blatant act by someone. Children can have similar experiences, but the number will show us that the experience has affected the person. One thing about your number breakdown is that there's a rich imagination, and there's an ability to sort of go into this bit of fantasy world if they'd like, or might be attracted to things like that. There's a little bit of escapism in that. So think about a child and your imagination and what you're attracted to. They prefer to be in a different world where things are a bit nicer. And you have 2 6s in your other numbers, and they can tend to idealize situations because they can see the potential of what they could be. That is why 6s are visionaries. That's why they can, in their own way, create and improve things. So with the breakdown of your 11, it also has a bit of an imaginative, creative type of concept where they prefer to see things in a certain way through certain lens. This can set you up for some issues, and in your relationships in particular, or career and other things, depending on your ultimate goal number, which is also known as your maturity number. You have to understand that an 11 requires that you dynamically inspire others. So there's a 7 in the breakdown of your ultimate goal number. It means that you're here to educate, inform, and teach, bring your truth to others. An 11 life path is supposed to enlighten others. That's why sometimes 11s rule the media because, well, that's a modern way of being able to get the word out. So the 7 needs to find their own truth, but all 7s tend to have trust issues. So when he said that I was here to educate, inform, and teach, and bring my truth to others, 2 years ago, I really didn't know what that meant because I can totally see Maria bringing her truth and her knowledge to people about the spiritual metaphysical world. And I thought to myself, like, what am I, like, it didn't make sense to me, like how as an 11, what I was supposed to bring to this world. But as I get older now, I realize that I think, we'll see how it plays out, but my truth was more so in building a company that treats people fairly, pays them fairly, and also creates just a very healthy atmosphere for their employees. And the reason why I think that is because I have been abused in a work environment before, and where I met Maria and bullied. And it's just one of those things where it just kind of set us on a different path, and realizing that we can impact the world in a business sense and show people that you can have a good business, you can be profitable, but you can still also be humane and be a place where people enjoy coming in to work. So that is kind of like a feeling that I have that has been growing within me and kind of coming to realization these past 2 years. Now look at the ultimate goal number and life path number. They can modify these things. You can be very generous, giving, caring, and loving, but the 7 isn't the most demonstrative number. It's typically reserved and protective. Asians and Germans tend to be a little bit more reserved, just generally and culturally speaking, so that can be a factor. I am glad he did mention that instead of making a kind of blanket statement, because growing up in Asian culture, you tend to be less touchy and feely. Like, it's rare to see like family and friends, at least that are Vietnamese, to even actually, we've never seen them kiss in front of each other. And that was normal, you know, even holding hands. I've been to other countries like this where it seemed more normal. Whereas, like, let's say in Spain or other places where PDA was a lot more heavy, it wasn't something I was uncomfortable with. It was just something I was like, oh, in this country, that's very normal. That's what they do. That's what they grew up with. Now, there might be something deeper than this that we have to look at, because there are 2 numbers in your ultimate goal. The other one is a 17/8. And that's the final number in the chart. So we have to look at the 7 with the 17/8. So let's start getting into the deep stuff. Now, 8 is typically a number associated with career goals, which are here to accomplish your current achievement. It's supposed to be a number of authority and power. This is a number that can bring success, financial gains, and achievement. If it's the ultimate goal number, particularly if it's the final number of the chart here, It means that there is some self-worth and self-value concerns that can play a significant role in getting in the way of you being empowered, getting what you're worth. However, people who are integrate 8s or healed 8s tend to be higher earners. They tend to do financially well. There are also cases where people have a 17/8 early in their lives who are so ambitious and driven as a compensating factor for their low self-worth that it does push them to excel. And some of them can become high achievers and wealthy, but if they get to the peak too early, they may go through negativity with their goals. There can be a lack of satisfaction. There can be issues that come up. I mean, I'm glad there's an 8 because it has to do with money and success, but also the part where it says self-worth, self-value concerns, getting what you're worth. That is something I struggled with more so. I wonder if the mic picks up the airplane. Getting what you're worth, I've always had issues with that. More so in not being able to advance or get promoted in the workplace. I've been stuck being an executive assistant for years, and so it just was a struggle in that sense. In general, 7s are meaningfulness, doing something that feeds the soul. It's a spiritual number, essentially. So there's a breakdown of a 7 in your life path and also a 7 in your ultimate goal. And don't forget the 27/9 in the inner drive. So this is why there's no doubt that you're supposed to be involved in truth and knowledge. 11 rules alternative work. Those are the 11 and 7-ish types. It's funny how he breaks down these numbers because, again, he didn't know what industry or career I was doing in my life. And he didn't know I was working on the Happy Healing Shop. He's reading as if like what you were meant to do, what your life path and purpose was meant to do. And so back then it's, again, involved in truth and knowledge, and that could be more of like the spiritual world in that sense. And all 11 rules alternative work. So, the metaphysical world is definitely alternative for sure. So 8 rules how you make your money in the sense of commercial success. Well, 8 is considered a number that's driven towards status, doing well. So there's a breakdown of 17/8, which is the other maturity number. But when you have a 7 and 8 in the chart, it can conflict. There can be a need or drive to be able to make good money off the job that you're not aligned with, and it doesn't feed your soul and it doesn't make you happy. Or you're involved in deeper spiritual pursuits or deeper knowledge or things that feed your soul or meaningfulness, but then there's issues with the financial aspects of it. In relationships, you may attract 7s or 8s as people. A 7 person will be a person who's doing deeper work or work that's more meaningful, that feeds the soul. They might be intelligent, spiritual, or they might have a fine mind or into research knowledge, informational stuff, and things that feed the intellect. But they may have financial issues, or they're not as driven or ambitious as much as they should be. Or they might not have their business in order, so they might not be operating at the level that they could. If you date this type, then you play an 8 role for them. You might actually try to help them with their business. So he'll be like a fixer-upper, and you'd help build their confidence, their goals, and success. And with your double 6s in your chart, that's an improvement and changing and bettering people number. Now, that's fine if you're going to get paid for that. 7s are what I call a consultant/advisor type of person. And then if you date an 8, there might be an entrepreneur guy who's very ambitious. He might be interested or obsessed with success, achievement, or status, or things like that. If you haven't dated that guy, you might meet that guy at some point, and then you might try to 7-nize him. You might bring some spirituality or deeper truth to him, or try to get him to find that life is more than just money or success. Neither one, by the way, will work because you're playing out your chart. Why? Because you're projecting your chart. You're supposed to trust in your own truth, knowledge, and information, and then you're supposed to turn that into your own business. Ding, 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 Happy Healing Shop. And then you're supposed to enlighten people with your 11 and awaken and shift the consciousness and awareness of people in a way that helps change it, improves people's lives and society in some capacity. 11s tend to be alternative practitioners. 7s can be people who are giving information and truth to people. Now, whenever you have a maturity number that breaks down to 17/8, we have to talk about the concept of your family, about the socioeconomic status of your environment growing up. Immigrant parents, now I've noticed that this is sometimes a factor, that the parents worked really hard and became successful, but there is always this concern about spending money the wrong way. So the idea here is that we have to look at the mentality of their experience and how that shaped their psychology and the way they conducted their lives and acted. There can be sometimes a working class mentality. There can be sometimes a struggling mind, or there can be fights or disagreements over money. Yes, my parents were immigrants and refugees from the Vietnam War. And so they came here super poor. And so even as a kid, I knew that my family wasn't financially, I guess, comfortable. I was just very aware at such a young age, like maybe 8 years old, that we always had to budget, or we always had to save. It was growing up in a very like save mentality. With the 17/8 number, you can experience trust and betrayal issues in your business and finances, or where things can come up at work as far as authority and power, who's running things. You may not like certain authority figures or the way things are running, so that's a classic indicator of self-empowerment wound inside being manifested, and with other people's powers and authority, and then you may experience negativity with that. You're able to see what the flaws are, improve the change, and be the one that knows, understands, and has the research and knowledge to educate people and get paid for that. Sixes rule specifically visual media, such as film, TV. They can be a troubleshooter and improve and see the flaws and educate people. 7 is more for information and informing people. 8 is more like a producer or someone that handles money. And all these numbers, it just shows putting it together in some kind of a document or for media, for education or awareness. Ultimately, 8s should own their own business and make their money, period. End of story. In this reading, this is one of those memorable sentences that I remember him saying, because I mean, obviously it's not specific in the sense of where you're like, oh, your life path is to be a director at this educational company or something like that. But it's just saying the long-term goal of what you were meant to do is, for me in this case, with the 8, is own my own business and make my own money. End of story. So it was just nice hearing that in a way, because you're like, wow, okay, I kind of feel like there's a bit clarity there, because I think I was toggling between like working for a company, corporations, whatever, and trying to rise up the ranks. And, back then Happy Healing Shop was not even a thing. We were just a few months in and we're just like, let's just do some psychic nights or whatever so it wasn't really, we didn't really exactly see it as a business or company yet. So when he said this, it was just interesting, because I was thinking to myself, is this what Happy Healing Shop's gonna be? So in the next part of our session, he backtracks into your life to show how the number cycles played out in your life. So like next year, 2022, I'm supposed to go into my 8 cycle, if you do the calculations. And 8 cycle means success, money coming in, or maybe like a new job, change of a job, things like that. However, in the process of going through these experiences, there's certain time frames that people will go through. Usually by late summer or fall, you're rolling into your next number cycle already. So he calculated and saw that I was going back in summer or fall of 2011 to the end of summer and fall of 2012 was my 7 cycle. We're going there because 7 cycles can have a meaningful effect. Back at that time frame, we have to look and see how some wake-up call, maybe through some trust or betrayal stuff happens, but also about your relationship stuff that plays out and manifests in your chart and career, such as like your focus issues on involving deserving, manifesting the love of relationship with money, power, career changes, ambition, and drive versus having meaningfulness at work, and issues with authority. In 2014, it was your 9th cycle, and that was the ending completion. That was the end of your 9-year cycle. There was an ending to a job or relationship or a move that happened there. So what happened was that end of 2011 to 2012 cycle, which was my 7th cycle, I worked a lot to save up money. This was when I was out of college. I didn't want to settle down, and I wanted to know what was out there. And so that's when I decided to save up money and take my first backpacking trip to Europe for 3 months. And when he mentioned something about betrayal or something along that theme, I did have a friend, not a friend anymore, I guess, that didn't support me in my travels, thought I was ruining my career. And I was a bit surprised by that. And instead of getting the support, and keep in mind back then in 2011, 2012, travel and backpacking and solo traveling was not a thing yet. Now it's like normal, but back then it wasn't. So she didn't give me the support that I was hoping for. And that's, I guess, how a little bit of betrayal and trust played out. So also with the number 7, it rules spirituality and truth and finding a deeper meaning in life and things like that. So it's funny because when back then I wanted to travel and kind of discover what else was out there. So as you can see, it kind of falls into that theme of not necessarily spirituality in that case, but also like finding the truth. So that wake up call with a friend that wasn't supporting you, it was like a backstab or something that broke your trust. It's the symbolism for you're sabotaging your career by doing something that you want to feed your soul. And that friend who is supposed to support you betrays you. And that feeding this negativity in your mind that you're somehow going to ruin your career prospects. And you're not going to get a good job, and therefore you're not going to be able to support yourself. That equals betrayal towards your goals, careers, finances, and things of this sort. And this emphasizes the 7 in your chart having trust issues. In your fall of 2012 to 2013 is an 8 cycle, which has to do with usually money, career, jobs. So in that time, I traveled and worked abroad in Australia. So again, that I found a job, which is something that can happen in an 8 cycle in your life. Sometime by 2016, it looks like you were on a path that awakened you. There might have been some exposure or some experience you had that caused you to make some decision or be awakened. For example, there might have been a spiritual thing that happened in your life. There might have been possibilities to make a decision to move towards something a little bit more alive towards the end of 2016. I got laid off at my job. In that moment, I couldn't see or think of how that put me on a spiritual path or had an awakening. You have to understand something. In your 11, picking up a little bit of your 3, 11 is a shift towards higher purpose. I have seen a million times. If you're not anywhere near your higher purpose, the universe says, F that, and it literally pushes you onto or going towards your path. If you won't make a decision to do it yourself and go towards your higher purpose, it will kick you out of the nest. That was a dark time for you, yes, but that was also the time frame that probably got you to at least awaken towards another path. So I got laid off from NBC, and then I got a job at Disney, and I worked under an abusive boss. So if you remember earlier in my reading, it talks about issues with authority figures. And so he brings it back and touches on it again and how it played out. We talked about you and authority figures. So once again, being the assistant to other people in charge and authority, suffering the consequences and having negativity at work and negativity in career based on power and authority issues. And of course, that is disempowering when someone abuses their power. That makes you feel powerless and angry. It's a betrayal of position. And we feel like we have to put up with that to make money. And then he asked me, so in fall of 2018, was there a new job? And because that's going into my next cycle. And I told him, yes, I switched to another department, still an executive assistant, but in another department under a much healthier boss. Ultimately, you should own your own business. It should be either enlightening or teaching or informing others, being sort of the advisor or consultant, helping others. But also, you could do work too. You could create things. 6 has the creative aspect about it. And those could be visual media projects that are informational. And your 11 in your chart is a bit of a new agey or the alternative spiritual path. 7 is actually the number of spiritualities, like 7 chakras, 7 sacraments, 7 days a week. So the 7-8 combo in your chart can also literally be a spiritual, which is a 7, business, which is an 8. In fact, I've seen people who teach meditation with a 7-8 combo, and that's their business. The 6 in your chart also has to do with aesthetics of how things look. So it's designed with aesthetics, beauty, artistic things, but it's to help the world, to help the public. That's going to have to be turned into a business where people can come and get their truth, can come and get help. I hope you take away from this why a numerology can help you understand your life's purpose It's not going to be specific, being where you say you're going to be discovering, oh, what's the next job I should apply to? So maybe like 10 years ago, I would have no idea what he was talking about because it kind of hasn't played out. I wasn't on close to any spiritual path. But now, doing what I know, it does sound exactly like Happy Healing Shop. Alternative stuff, spirituality, making a business out of it, but also including aesthetics of how things look. So the branding design is like beautiful and clean, and it's to help the public. It's where people can come and get their truth. So it's just very fascinating how it kind of played out, but also I hope you can see that when you get a numerology, you can understand what your soul's purpose is. And then I asked him, is there projection and when the Happy Healing Shop is going to flourish? Look, there's a conservative estimate. The conservative estimate is 2 years because you can understand your 8 cycle. So roughly in 2 years from now, so in October 21 to all of 2022, there's a time frame that the business can grow. And then you know what? After that comes a 9 cycle in 2023. And you know what that means? It means you can quit any other job you have. Now that's potential because that determines what you're also doing with your own free will. But those are all good things. Those are all an integration of your chart. There's a 7-8 combo integration. And then I revealed to him that I was doing Happy Healing Shop. And here he met Maria because Maria already had a session with him. And he just thought that I was her quasi-manager. And then he said, you actually have a business? Well, that's fucking phenomenal. That is 100% consistent with your chart. You played out the abuse of power I told you you would with authority figures. The fact is that out of all those jobs, the only job that accepted you was Disney. And that happened to be coincidentally, not so coincidentally, at the job that played out your 8 cycle in a conspicuous form. It's not general, it's very specific. The fact is you got fired from your job in your life. And you have to understand something. The 11 kicks you out of the nest, and then it costs you to search for something. You go to this job that's not consistent with your higher purpose. Then you get bombed on. This brings up some deep-seated stuff in you, soul-searching stuff, emotional stuff that acts as a catalyst for you to want to do stuff. So the 3 in your chart, it has to do with the deep emotional stuff, right? The abuse of power, position, and negativity around your work, that's where it played out for you. But I told you, in your case, your emotional stuff can be tied to work and career more than others. Anyways, the dynamic is clear. So now that brings up all this deep emotional stuff in you that acts as a catalyst for you to seek something else. You know that business at some point, you're going to have to be a teacher and bring your own truth because that's your 7. You're not going to just own the business and have other people do this stuff. At some point, you're going to have to be a 7 and 8 and say, oh, Josh, but owning a business 8 where I'm providing opportunities again, spirituality, truth, and knowledge of 11-ish kind to help people and improve people's lives as a 6. What the do you want me to do? Everything in my chart being integrated, pretty much all of it, except the fact that 7s have to bring their truth, not just other people's. And there you go. Now you know what a numerology report and what a 101 reading looks like. So here are the pros and cons when it's comparing these 2 numerology experiences that I had. Okay, so the pros about the online report. It was about $35 when I got back in 2019, so it's definitely a more affordable option. It comes in a PDF, so if you're the type to have friends who are into this and you guys like sharing things, this would totally work. The cons about the report, I know a bit about numerology, and I have a feeling that's technology that automatically creates these reports instead of an actual person on the other end. And because of this, I did catch a couple of minor numbers that were calculated a bit off, just little ones, because I have a letter Y in my last name. So depending on where it falls in your name and the sound it makes, you either calculate it as a vowel or a consonant. And I've seen a few numerology services offered by other people too. And when I skim over the website and what it offers, it feels very basic based off the service description they have. And it usually calculates your main 4 to 5 numbers and talks a bit about each of them. And it's more of a good beginner to intermediate level information and reading, in my opinion. So for the 1-hour session with Josh, I actually discovered him through a coworker. And the pros, as you can see from the video, he is an expert at it. He's that person that has read all the books, studied, and specializes in it. And he's also been featured in like CBS, LA Times, ABC News, History Channel, and I think he was a consultant for the numerology in the Jim Carrey film, The Number 23. Because you have an individual personalized one-on-one session with him, and he can do sessions online as well, he can deep dive into your numbers, your past, and make sense of the events that happened in your life. It's not a generic report. And I can attest to that because I also sat in Psychic Medium Maria Hill's session, and it was definitely different from mine. Most numerology reports talk about the major numbers that you have, but with an expert, as you saw, he breaks down the numbers even further and dissects what they mean for you. Okay, so the cons to getting the session, this is one of those situations where you pay for what you get, and he is on the pricier side. It's $250 for 1 hour on his website. However, he does work on Fridays at a metaphysical shop, and it's $175 for 1 hour instead, which I'll also include in the link down below. Finally, let me know in your comments below on watching this numerology session. Do you think it's something you try to discover your life purpose? And what else would you like me to try? And finally, if you'd like to learn more about the spiritual and metaphysical things such as crystals, energy, psychic abilities, and all that stuff, check out our awesome site and blog at thehappyhealingshop.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.